From The Times and The Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Luke Jones.
Last week, Donald Trump hosted a gala dinner at his Virginia golf club in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., just across the Potomac River, for the top 220 or so investors in a Memecoin he set up a few months ago.
A Memecoin, if you haven't any, is a sort of unsettling marriage between cryptocurrency and fan merchandise. Those who spent big on the Trump coin got an organic field salad, filet mignon, pan-seared halibut, lava cake, and a brief glimpse of the 47th President of the United States.
He spoke for about 20 minutes on the stage, regaling everyone present about how great the crypto market would be under Donald Trump, how he's going to liberalise it, how he's going to deregulate it.
And cash in on it.
This is Donald Trump profiting, his opponents say, from being the president. A lot of these people were foreign investors, leading to more accusations that this is a way that foreign interests have potentially bought access to Donald Trump.
Last week, the White House didn't respond to requests to release the guest list, saying this was the president's personal time, not official business.
One of the problems that people have with this dinner is that we just don't know who some of the people in attendance were. These are rich people who don't have to identify themselves when they buy some of these crypto tokens. Many of them are based overseas. We're seeing some of the photographs from the dinner emerging on social media and elsewhere. There's a guy called Justin Sun. He's a Chinese cryptocurrency billionaire. Until very recently, Justin Sun was afraid to travel to the US. There were allegations of fraud against him and said that he wouldn't travel to the US because he was afraid of being arrested.
Is Donald Trump cashing in on high office? Is his family? Or is this the business tycoon politician just doing what he's always done? The story today: Trump Family Incorporated.
I'm Alistair Dawber. I'm the Washington correspondent of The Times. And in recent weeks, I've been running quite a lot about Donald Trump, his money, his wealth, and how that's exploded since he returned to the White House.
Because to my mind, Donald Trump has always been wealthy. Even in his sort of Home Alone days, it's all been about flash cars and cash and property. But actually, just ahead of his re-election, things weren't so financially secure for him, were they?
No, and then to take a step back from that, Donald Trump has declared bankruptcy on several occasions in the past. He's a very wealthy man. He's a successful businessman. He took a business that his father set up and he transformed it into a huge real estate company. You walk around Manhattan in New York and there are Trump buildings everywhere. But yeah, 12 months ago, Donald Trump, to coin a phrase, was in his uppers. To most people, having $413 million in cash in the bank might sound like a good thing. But like anyone else, if you have more outgoings than incomings, you're in trouble. And that was exactly the case with Donald Trump. He just lost a case where his property company had a judgment against it, saying that it had falsely inflated the value of some of its properties to get bigger loans secured against them. And there was a bond for securing that case, which was worth $454 million, obviously more than he had in cash in the bank. He'd been sued by E. Jean Carroll, the writer. He denied that he'd raped her and was found civilly liable for that, for the sexual assault of her, and was sued successfully by E. Jean Carroll for defamation. So that was another $83 million. His legal fees in other cases were spiralling. He was running out of money.
And before we get into how he managed to turn that around, what is the present day picture? How does now compare to what you were just describing there?
So today, he's in rude health. I mentioned the cash he had in the bank. He had assets worth about $2 billion, according to Forbes magazine. Fast forward 12 months later, a successful presidential campaign, and back in the White House, he's now worth just over $5 billion, according to Forbes magazine, the same assessment. And that's because, as he's done throughout his life, he's traded, cajoled, sold, bought, threatened and everything else, and got himself back in the picture where financially he's as rich as he's ever been.
Well, let's get into how he's done that. The first way, which you've already hinted at, is through this Memecoin, this cryptocurrency, which we've had explained so many times on the podcast before, and it never quite goes in, Alistair. It's basically like Bitcoin, but it can be quite fashionable and its value can rise and fall, maybe even quicker than Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, this particular Memecoin, which has a dollar sign in front of it and then Trump in capital letters, its symbol is his raised fist that you saw when he survived the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania last year. Its value's oscillated hugely. It's worth, in sterling terms, about £10 per token today. It was worth about £60 on January the 20th earlier this year. That's a significant date, of course, because that's the date that Donald Trump was returned to office. Just before that, he was talking in great depth about deregulating cryptocurrencies, about the golden age of crypto assets. And in doing so, his family set up both the Memecoin and the platform for which crypto is traded on. The Memecoin itself, some estimates suggest it's made about $300 million for Donald Trump. Not a huge amount of his overall wealth, as we've just said, but a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
But also World Liberty Financial, which is the platform that the Trump family have set up, they earn about 60% of it, has also earned a huge amount of money for the family as well. So on the one hand, he comes into office talking about deregulating cryptocurrency. And on the other hand, as his critics point out, is him and his family are profiting handsomely from it.
So the profiting comes from, I, Luke Jones, want to buy some Trump coin and I want to buy $20 worth. They get a fee from that transaction because I'm doing it on their platform. And also me buying it, is a show of confidence in the currency and the value might go up.
Inflates the value of the currency as well, exactly. So they've profited handsomely from it. They've had investments from overseas, but also it's marketed very much as a Trump personal asset. You're essentially buying into Trump the man, Trump the brand. And if you think of how he's transformed the Republican Party over the last 10 years or so, people want a slice of him. People want to be seen to be supporting him. A lot of people that are buying some of these assets aren't pension funds or insurance companies that might buy other financial assets. Often these are very small individual retail investors who think that they're supporting Donald Trump, think they're investing in Trump the brand, have great faith in him as a leader, as a businessman, and believe that they're not only hoping to make some money, but also backing him personally.
Is there not a worry that this is a way, not just that he might empty the wallets of individual retail investors, as you suggested there, but it might be a way to have big governments and organisations try and curry favour? Luke Jones Limited is quite interested in X tariff being removed, so I'm going to make a big show and dance about actually buying a lot of coins that Donald Trump has something to do with, or this World Liberty Financial has to do with.
Yeah, I mean, that has to be a concern. If we look at some of the other transactions, there are certainly transactions that raise eyebrows, let's say, and raise questions. There's nothing to stop a company who wants to curry favour with Donald Trump buying into his crypto assets. And as we've seen with the dinner last week in Virginia at his golf club, buying these coins does, to an extent, guarantee access to the president. That's what people want. He's been meeting a lot of people at Mar-a-Lago. Well, it costs a lot of money to become a member of Mar-a-Lago and to dine at Donald Trump's club in Florida. Again, and there are accusations that people buy access. Now, businesses might turn around and say, look, we want to benefit from the economic revolution that Donald Trump has promised. Donald Trump has promised that America will have the best economy in the world ever, part two, as he gets into his time in office. Companies might say this is a legitimate use of our money to be at the forefront and the vanguard of that. But again, critics, if you take a step back, critics will say, well, that's fine. But should these companies be putting money into something that privately enriches the Trump family that might not be getting this cash or would not be getting this cash were it not for the fact that he was back in office? It's murky. Democrats, opponents don't like it. And I think, in fairness as well, that the White House often has trouble justifying it too.
Well, you say some Democrats don't like it. Is there anything that they can do or are planning to do? Because obviously there are rules already in place to stop, people just shoving cash into the pocket of the sitting president, foreign governments or whoever. But with this, are they wondering if there's scope for extending these laws to try and stop some of this happening?
It's very, very difficult. The Republicans hold a majority in the House of Representatives. They hold a majority in the Senate. So it would require legislation. It would require amendments to the Constitution. There are strict rules. There's what they call the Emoluments Clause in the Constitution, which, as you've suggested, prevents foreign governments, kings and queens, as it discusses as well, personally enriching the president. But it's a bit more complicated than that. There are ways that foreign governments can personally enrich the Trump family without just handing over cash. And that, critics say, is happening. The Constitution is actually pretty toothless. The Congress is pretty toothless when it comes to stopping this. And the White House at the moment is batting away any criticism, saying, look, Donald Trump was elected not as a politician, but as a deal maker, as a businessman, who's someone who can get things done.
I think it's frankly ridiculous that anyone in this room would even suggest that President Trump is doing anything for his own benefit. He left a life of luxury and a life of running a very successful real estate empire for public service, not just once, but twice. And again, the American public reelected him back to this White House because they trust he acts in the best interests of our country and putting the American public first. This is a president. They
say that the economy in the US was moribund until Trump came into office in 2017. And then Joe Biden administration, his administration ruined it again. And he's been re-elected to put money in the pockets of Americans. And he can do this because he's a businessman. Well, what do you expect business people to do? You expect them to make money. The White House argues consistently that this is a good thing and that no rules are being broken. And of course, the Republican Party has changed a lot in the last 10 years. There aren't too many Republicans, especially in the House of Representatives, that don't owe their position, their patronage to Donald Trump. I mean, a Trump endorsement is incredibly valuable, and a lot of people are only in the House because they've been endorsed by Donald Trump, and once they're there, will be very, very reluctant to do anything to upset him or the MAGA movement. We've seen just last week with the finance bill, 2 Republican members of the House voted against it. And Donald Trump's reaction is to say, well, there might well be an organised primary against these guys in their districts, as in the MAGA movement will try and replace them because they've not been sufficiently loyal to Trump. That's over a piece of legislation that doesn't really affect him personally.
But is the money going into Donald Trump's current account? If he was here, would he not say, well, this is going into my family company and I'm somewhat separate from that at the moment? Is that the case?
Absolutely. And the rules governing how presidents, how people in America who serve in office can make money are very, very long-standing and well-defined. When Donald Trump was first elected president in 2017, he set up a blind trust for his assets. He has no control over the businesses, according to the blind trust, and it's his family, notably his 2 eldest sons, Don Jr. and Eric Trump in particular, who have day-to-day control over the companies. But that doesn't mean to say, of course, that Donald Trump can't make a huge amount of money. In the first term, between 2017 and 2021, Trump hotels around the world encourage foreign dignitaries to come and stay there. Since Donald Trump has taken office for a second time, we're seeing not just that phenomenon happen again, but also other aspects of his businesses, now controlled by his sons, who have really gone to town and really made a huge amount of money since Donald Trump returned to office.
Alistair, we're talking about the Trump coffers, Trump Organization. You were discussing crypto, but Donald Trump's also just back from a tour of the Middle East, a diplomatic trip, but something arguably the Trump bottom line has done quite well out of as well. How much Trump property is there in the Middle East, already there and incoming?
Donald Trump, in May, his first major foreign trip abroad, he visited Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE. And I think it's fair to say that there were 3 reasons for that trip. First of all, those 3 countries have pledged well over $1 trillion in investment into the United States. which will create jobs, which will boost the US economy. There's also, of course, a war raging in the Middle East, and those three countries play a significant diplomatic role in trying to find a solution to it. So Donald Trump being there was able to discuss face-to-face with some of these leaders how the situation in Gaza might get resolved. But if you just sort of peel back the curtain a little bit and look at the Trump family, there are huge property investments by the Trump family in the Middle East.
Some addresses require directions. This one doesn't. Trump International Hotel and Tower, Dubai.
Trump Tower Jeddah is an unparalleled fusion of modern architecture, high-touch design, and world-class living. Every detail is a masterpiece. Every residence crafted to inspire.
In the last year, there's been a huge apartment complex built in Saudi Arabia. There's a new Trump-branded golf course in Qatar. And you mentioned the UAE. The UAE has invested about $2 billion in Liberty World Financial, the cryptocurrency platform that the Trump family have set up. So as well as all these positive diplomatic, economic development reasons to visit these three countries, there's also a huge personal reason to visit these countries as well. The Trump family is making investments. The Qataris have invested more than $3 billion in Jared Kushner's private equity firm. Now, Jared Kushner is Donald Trump's son-in-law. He served as an advisor in the first term. Like Trump, he's a property developer. His father's just been appointed by Trump to be the US's new ambassador to Paris. And yet he has also been out and benefited personally from some of these relationships that he has forged, that the Trump family have forged in the Middle East over the last few years. So again, critics say, look, we can't argue that we don't like trillions of dollars investment in the US economy, but we do think there's questions to be asked when it comes to the Trump family being personally enriched as a result of some of the investments in their businesses, in their properties, in their projects by some of these governments. And then, of course, there's the issue of the plane.
Well, yes.
We do have some breaking news into CNN. Despite bipartisan criticism, the Pentagon says it has accepted that Boeing 747 jet from Qatar and that President Trump will use it once it has been modified.
Which has caused huge controversy, even among supporters, people who would normally come out and back Donald Trump to the hilt. Some of them are extremely critical of the issue of the plane.
Let's just delineate that, though, because the properties and the golf courses in parts of the Middle East, it is one thing. That's the Trump organization doing that. And as you've said, the White House would say, well, that's in a blind trust at the moment. That's ticking over, doing its own thing, nothing really to do with the president at the moment. But the plane is the first time really the government has got involved, because this, what is it, $400 million worth of jet is being donated by the Qataris to the Ministry of Defense.
That's right.
Why has that become so heated?
Donald Trump visited this plane in Florida several months ago and came off and described it as a palace in the sky.
Lots of gold.
Lots of gold. It's fitted out beautifully. There is, for the best seats on the aircraft, there's its own separate entrance, and there's a suite, a bedroom, an office, almost like a luxury flat in itself in part of this jet. Reporting suggests that rather than it being offered by the Qataris to the US, that the White House might have asked the Qataris if they could have it. It's a hugely expensive piece of equipment. Donald Trump complains that Air Force One, the presidential jet, or the fleet of presidential jets, are old, they're decaying, they need upgrading.
We have 40-year-old aircraft. The money we spend, the maintenance we spend on those planes to keep them tippy-top is astronomical. You wouldn't even believe it.
There are lots of questions about whether or not Qatar really ought to be providing the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, with this jet. The Boeing jets will come online in about 2029. And the idea is that this plane will then end up as part of Trump's legacy, if you like, Trump's presidential library.
So he does actually sort of benefit from it in the end somehow.
Well, I think it's more than sort of benefit from it. By the time Donald Trump leaves office, this plane will belong to his presidential library. The library isn't built, it's a working jet, so what will be useful? It'll be used for Donald Trump to fly around the world in. This plane will end up being Trump's jet when he leaves office, when he's left the White House behind and he's travelling the world as a private citizen and back to running his businesses.
Let's just do a quick trolley dash of some other things out there which the Trumps are making money from. First of all, it's so obvious, but I hadn't even thought about this as a money spinner. His own social media platform, is that doing any business for him?
Truth Social platforms made a huge amount of money. This is essentially what got him out of trouble last year. They floated the business, which again did extremely well because a lot of people who are fans of the Trump family, who are fans of him, bought shares, and the shares have since plummeted. But Donald Trump's stake is pretty huge, and it's something else that's really lined his pocket, that's done very, very well for him.
MAGA merch.
Hello, everyone. This is your favorite president, Donald J. Trump, with some very exciting news. By popular demand, I'm doing a new series of Trump digital trading cards. It's called the America First Collection. I'm proud to endorse and encourage you to get this Bible. We must make America pray again. My new Trump fragrances are here. They make a great Christmas present. I've named them Fight, Fight, Fight because they represent winning. We all want to be winning. We have to win as a nation.
You can buy trainers, you can buy a Bible, you can buy T-shirts. I was at the Republican convention in Milwaukee last year, and in one of the conference centers, there was a whole floor of Trump merchandise. Of course, it was just after he'd survived the shooting in Pennsylvania. And within a couple of days, there were T-shirts for sale, there were flags for sale of Donald Trump standing up, lifting his fist in the air and shouting, fight, 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 which is what he said when he got up off the floor, the bullet having grazed his ear. They made a huge amount of money. I mean, it was one of the things we've seen in the US since he was elected is this discussion about whether or not he's going to try and upend the Constitution and run for a third term, which constitutionally he can't do. He was on TV a few weeks ago saying, no, I've got no intention of running for a third term. But, a lot of people are making money out of baseball caps with Trump 2028 on it.
There are many people selling the 2028 hat, but this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, ideally a great Republican to carry it forward.
Well, if you go onto the Trump Organization website, for $50 a throw, you can buy a baseball.
It's him.
So it's him that's making the money out of it. And all right, $50 a throw, you're not going to become hugely wealthy. You're not going to become a billionaire on 2028 Trump baseball caps. But he is using that demand from some of his supporters, that controversy, that news story, if you like, to see banknotes rolling into the businesses that ultimately he benefits from.
And one more, and another money spinner for the First Lady, Melania Trump.
Amazon, Jeff Bezos is paying $40 million to license a documentary about Melania Trump.
Again, is that baseball cap level cash or is that a real earner?
Who has been one of Trump's biggest cheerleaders in the tech industry since he was re-elected? It's been Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos has dined with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He put some money into the inauguration fund for Trump's inauguration in January. And now, lo and behold, there's more money coming from Amazon, making the Melania documentary. It's another example of just the tentacles of the Trump empire and how it stretches into so many different things.
We always say Donald Trump and everything he does is unprecedented, and there is a lot which we've discussed here, which previous presidents haven't necessarily done. But is it that wildly different, actually? Lots of presidents have been successful business people in the past, and I'm sure continue doing deals whilst they're in office.
Look, the criticism of Donald Trump is that he's using the presidency to make a ton of money. But the Clinton family have made a ton of money after Bill Clinton left office and when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State and a senator. The idea that presidents are poor is not the case. George W. Bush, did he benefit as a businessman before he became governor of Texas by the fact that his father had been the president? People want to get close to people who have access to power, and one way of doing that is paying for it. So it's not so much that other people who've held high office in America haven't benefited from their status. I think the criticism is that it's just so naked and so flagrant with this president. The difference perhaps might be how different people treat the office of the presidency. Richard Painter was George W. Bush's ethics advisor during his 8 years in office and said that the Bush family was so careful not to have any association, not to have any accusation that they might be profiteering from the presidency. One example, he said at a school in Texas, George W. Bush's home state, an elementary school, wants to call itself the George W. Bush School or the George W. Bush Elementary School. And the Bush family said no to that because they feared that they would give an impression of bias. That's obviously not something that the Trump family feel bound by.
You said that Democrats are up in arms about this, of course. What about people in Trump world, though? Are any usual supporters actually finding some of this is a bit much?
Yeah, I think if there's been a point at which the down burst, it has been over the Qatari plane. Take Ted Cruz, for example, a senator from Texas who's close to Trump, very loyal to Trump, often him on the airwaves defending Trump when Trump's being criticised. He's also been a huge critic of Qatari foreign policy and the influence that Qatar has. He said that the DOD, as it is, shouldn't be taking this jet.
Well, listen, I'm not a fan of Qatar. I think they have a really disturbing pattern of funding theocratic lunatics who want to murder us, funding Hamas and Hezbollah. And that's a real problem. I also think that the plane poses significant espionage and surveillance problems. So we'll see how this issue plays out. But I certainly have concerns.
Others too, members of the MAGA movement. Charlie Kirk, a young activist who's on the right, usually supportive of Donald Trump, has also criticised the jet as well. And others, Ben Shapiro, who's come out and on his podcast, I think it was, has been both critical of the Qataris.
Qatar likes to present a modern Western-friendly face while shoveling money to Islamic terrorists under the table. This is a regime that has, for literally decades, funneled billions of dollars into the hands of Hamas, Hezbollah, the Taliban. We're talking about...
But also critical of the decision to accept this jet.
Is this good for President Trump? Is it good for his agenda? Is it good for draining the swamp and getting things done? The answer is no, it isn't. It isn't. If you want President Trump to succeed, this kind of skeezy stuff needs to stop.
Does this tell us something about Donald Trump in that some might have said years ago, he's about deals, he's about getting things done, he's about wealth and prosperity. He's not really a political animal. Hence the situation that you have where all of a sudden all these MAGA types who for years have not liked what the Qataris are up to are shocked at how Donald Trump could strike some deal over this plane with them. It's because Donald Trump sort of doesn't really care about Qatari politics or what they're doing in the Middle East, but he likes golden planes.
I think this is where the defence comes in. I mean, we've been speaking for a while now about all these things that have stoked controversy, people are angry about, arguably shouldn't be doing. Should it be the fact that the Trump businesses are doing so well as a result of him being in office? The White House has been adamant that Trump is doing nothing wrong.
And the Trump family is making money off of this. So can you just explain how is this not the president using the office to enrich himself?
All of the president's assets are in a blind trust, which is managed by his children. And I would argue one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president back to this office is because he was a very successful businessman before giving it up to publicly serve our country.
Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, gets asked about this on an almost daily basis. And she pushes back very, very hard and said, look, he's a deal maker. He's a businessman. He's successful. That's why people elected him. And also, she says, look, imagine how richer Donald Trump would be if he hadn't ever worried about coming back into office, if he could just devote all his time to running his businesses. She points out that, or she argues at least, that despite his billions, he's a much poorer man as a result of his decision to serve in office again.
This president was incredibly successful before giving it all up to serve our country publicly. And not only has he lost wealth, but he also almost lost his life. He has sacrificed a lot to be here.
Donald Trump, for the best part of 50 years, has been someone who's traded, wheeled, dealed, made money, upset people on the way, done things that a lot of people don't think are sort of things he should have done. People have talked about his moral compass and in some instances say he's morally reprehensible. But people voted for him. And the idea that Donald Trump was going to come into office and give up his entire personality in order to run the country was never a go in the first place.
Alistair Dawber, Washington correspondent for The Times and The Sunday Times. You can read plenty more of his and the rest of our Washington team's coverage with a subscription at thetimes.com. That is it from us today. The producer was Edward Drummond, the executive producer was Molly Guinness, and sound design and theme composition was by Mauro Seto. I'm Luke Jones. See you soon.